Hey everybody, welcome back to the Divergent Comics YouTube channel. Today I have two new creators. Really excited. Met Frankie on Threads, which was a huge benefit because I got to get a little bit of
Yep.
insight into the comics that they make. So this is very exciting. But I got
Yep.
Frankie and Matthew here. They have a comic book series called
Yep.
Kaijus and Cowboys. We'll definitely dive into that deeper into the video. But first, we'll start out uh, with you all introducing yourselves and kind of telling us about who you are. We'll start with you, Frankie, and then
All
Matthew will
right.
go
Oh
next.
boy, what is there to know? I see Frankie B. Washington. I am a Boston boy. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. God, I've always been a fan of super robots and kaijus, giant monsters. I love comics. I love comics. I love superheroes. I love all that fantasy, horror, and all that stuff. But something about these kind of characters, these sort of scenarios with human beings piloting giant robots that had these incredible, weaponry and stuff like that, fighting to save humanity against giant kaijus. It just blew my mind. So as a young kid, I used to like beg my mom, please give me some of those diecast figures. And she'd always be like, "Boy, I can't afford it." She'd give me the cheap ones. Like she would never give me the ones like at that time it was like a $60 like version, of a figure that I wanted. She'd be like, "No, that's too much." So I would get something that'd be cheaper. But even the
Yeah,
cheap ones were cool. But they weren't the ones I was seeing on
that's
TV,
good.
of
Yeah,
course. So I was all like a kid. You know how kids are. But it
yeah, still
inspired me. I
disappointed.
mean, really, the Shogun Warriors by Marvel Comics, done by the team of Doug Munich and Herb Trimpe. They also did Godzilla for Marvel Comics. That was really the turning point for me because for the longest time I was seeing stuff that was coming from Japan and going, wow, I'm either gonna have to go to Japan and get be there and whatever. I hadn't seen any Americans try to take what was coming from Japan and then adapt it to an American kind of style and have it sort of become the American kind of Western style. And I thought those guys did a fantastic job with the Marvel comics with Shogun Warriors because it felt like these characters that were clearly characters created from the Asian pop culture fit in the Marvel universe. And as a young kid looking at that, I was like, "Whoa, man! If they can do it, I can do it." And so that stayed in my mind for years and years and years. And so, through high school, I had teachers that really pushed me to get into artwork. They put me in a lot of different programs. Eventually, I was able to get a scholarship, and they said, "Okay, kid, go find a school." And what happened was I did get
Nice.
contacted by the Joe Kubert School. I remember they sent me a letter saying, "Hey, you're welcome to come and whatever," and I didn't want to leave Massachusetts. So I was like, nah, dude, you guys are in Jersey. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. So I said, I'm going to stick around because Massachusetts got Mass Art and that was a pretty big school and whatever. But there were some other schools too I took some looks at. And one of the schools was Butera School of Art, which is no longer exists. And Butera School of Art, what I liked about it was that it was a commercial illustration. They had a commercial illustration program, but also sign painting as well, but it was a commercial illustration program that I was really interested in. And I remember going in, showed my portfolio, and the teachers there were all working artists. They were all artists who made money, and that was their whole mandate. They were like, they gave me the whole spiel. They said, look, if you're here to just have your artwork sit on a wall, then this school's not good for you. They said, you are a what did they call it? You are a contractor. That's exactly what they said. You are a contractor. You are paid because of a skill set, and for a client pays you for your skill to do something for them, and you get paid for that. And that was it. It wasn't no sense of like this glorified sense of art and flowery and all the things. They were like, yeah, you can do that on your own time. I tell you right now, I think there was one semester where I actually went to like the Museum of Art, and we had to write a paper on like one of the classic artists, and that was it. They were just like, okay, we just you just got to do that, and then we were back to like more commercial stuff. They were really hardcore on like, as soon as you leave here, you're gonna work. You have to work in the industry. We don't care what you're doing,
That's
but you're gonna
good.
have to work in the industry. And so what happened
That's
was
good.
once I
That's really
left,
good.
it took me around 2 years before I really found my footing But eventually, I got a gig in a small production company that was in Waltham, Mass. I worked on two
Okay.
films. One of the films was called Squeeze. It was filmed in Dorchester, and then another one was called Next Stop Wonderland. And I got accredited. I can't believe it. I actually watched it with my wife last year. I got
Oh,
accredited
that's nice.
as storyboard artist. So if you ever see those films, I think they're on Amazon. You ever see it, you'll see my name pop up and stuff. So I got accredited for that. When I was working
Nice.
in production companies, though, I was still sort of frustrated because I just wasn't feeling like I was around other artists who could sort of help me grow. Because I was in that stage in my life, I was in my 20s, where I was looking to grow. I wanted to be around other creative people who were highly skilled, who can tell me if I was doing things wrong, so I can get better. And I was
Mhm.
always open for that. And I felt like when I was working at this production studio, I just wasn't getting that. So what happened was I left them, and a teacher of mine said, "Hey, look, this animation studio in Brighton, Mass, is looking for someone to do storyboards." And so they said, "Would you mind if you should head over there, Frank?" So I did, showed them my stuff. They accepted me. I worked on a freelance basis with them, and I ended up doing a ton of storyboards. I did design layouts and stuff for their commercials and for like stop animation stuff and
Nice.
some 2D animation things. So then that was another learning period for me where I had all these amazing artists, animators, directors, people just constantly talking to me and stuff, telling me stuff, and I'm just picking it all up. And so that was the next stage of my career. Then the biggest stage of my career came when once I that ended with the animation, I got into advertising. And advertising is I
That's where
I
the
tell
money's
any
at.
I tell everyone that I say advertising is the mecca. It's like the parents. You cannot mess around in advertising because you're talking thousands, if not millions of dollars on the line. They don't play around. If you screw up on something, you know how you'll know if you screw up? Your phone won't ring at the time. Your beeper won't go off. You won't get any more emails. And that's it. They'll
Yeah.
be like, you're done. And so I once I got into that world, it was like my mind was just blown. Like I was being surrounded by so many super talented creative people. I mean, from copywriters, creative directors, ADs, photographers, just all different people. And I'm just like this fly on the wall. I'm sitting in on meetings. I'm picking up stuff. I'm
Yeah.
being exposed to all these different things, and they were all just stuff that I could add to my own war chest and the development of who I am now as an artist, as a professional artist. And so I went
Mhm.
a couple of years, a vast amount of years in advertising, but there was still that part that was missing, and that was this comic books. I still had, when I went into art school, I went in loving comics. I even had some comic
Yeah.
books as part of my samples. But once I left art school, I started seeing how comic books, it was really hard. It was like tough. You didn't make a lot of money in it. I had friends and buddies who worked for the major guys, and they never were seeming like they were happy, but then they weren't happy. And so I was like, wow, you guys, man, I'm working in advertising. I'm doing all this stuff and making some really great money. But you should be
Yeah.
happy because you're working comic. But it wasn't like that. And so I would always kind of dip my foot into comic books a little bit, but then I would jump out of it. And I never was really hardcore into it. I would
Yeah.
try to do other projects that would get me into that comic book way, sort of like working with RPG game source books. I did illustrations for that. I did some toy stuff. And then I started doing like little gigs, anthology books, stuff, anything that could get me a little bit into comic books.
Right.
So now we push back up to when the point where I met my friend here, Matthew.
Well, Matthew, you have the fortunate responsibility of
Yeah.
following up that introduction.
We do a lot of these interviews. We've been
Yeah.
doing a lot of these over the last 5 years. It's always a pleasure to just
Yeah.
to do these because I can literally just sit here and listen, and it's like Frankie said, just
Yeah.
be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
My story is not nearly as
Yeah.
epic, and it's not nearly as um, uh, professional. I am the son of two ministers. I was born in North Carolina.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, but we moved there when I moved out when I was like 6 months old. So like, born in North Carolina, then we moved to Washington, D.C., then we moved to Rhode Island, then we moved to Massachusetts, then we moved back to Rhode Island, then we
Yep.
moved to Massachusetts, then I went to college
Woo.
in Florida, and then I came back home, went to Chicago for a little
Wow.
bit, and then came back to Massachusetts. So, and now
Yep.
I'm here on the West Coast. So, like,
Yeah,
when people ask, where are you from?
Yeah.
it's like
It gets a
everywhere.
little, yeah. Mostly
Yep.
Southern Massachusetts is where I say when people want a short answer. But I think like while all of this was happening, one of the things I fell in love with was storytelling. When most people say oh, I've loved comics from a young age, me not really, not so much. I'm kind of a latecomer
Mhm.
Same.
to the industry, and kind of a latecomer to like what comics are and what they could be. When I was a kid, my parents were really big into like
Yes.
ancient mythology and
Yes.
history, and so like I grew up with like the Iliad and the Odyssey. Like those were the stories of
Yes, I
my
remember that.
childhood.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and so as a result, like I also grew up in the '90s, and like if you know anything about comic book history, the '90s were kind of a
Eh,
dicey time
yeah.
for comic books in terms of stories, and so I sort of looked down on it a little bit. But
Mm.
in the early 2000s, I discovered the Justice League cartoon,
Oh,
and
yes.
specifically like Dwayne McDuffie.
Yes.
And his stuff,
Oh,
like the Milestone stuff and
yes.
Static Shock, I was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing.
A
This is
legend.
wonderful, and
Yeah.
I want to like this is interesting. I also grew up reading a lot of Tintin books and
Yep.
Asterix and
Yep.
Obelix. If you don't
I
know
know
who
Tintin.
those are, that
Yeah.
it's
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
French comic books because
Gotcha. Okay. I thought I had
but
heard that before.
yeah, but that's where I grew what I grew up with, and where I come from. I was a history major in college. I never really knew I wanted to write. Like the MCU started happening, and I was like, okay, so this
Hmm.
is a viable thing. This is something people pay attention to. Let's study this. This
Right.
is cool. This is interesting. Um, and then I graduated college, and things didn't fall apart, but that like that there was
Yeah.
it was difficult.
Yep.
I often because like I graduated in 2012. We were still recovering from the 2008
Hmm.
financial
Yep.
crisis, and like I couldn't find a job to save my life. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how I could do it, and things got a little. I'm not
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
get personal
Yeah.
here, but things got a little dicey, and I remember the exact time and day and like what was going on. I was lying in bed. I was uh not feeling too well about the state of things, and I thought I'm gonna make a comic book.
Wow. There you
Because why
go.
not?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
how it all
Therapy,
starts.
man. That's it.
yeah. How hard
Yeah.
can it be? How hard can it be? And it's like spoiler alert. Like it's possible to be successful and to build yourself up from
Hmm.
relatively nothing. It's just
Oh yeah.
insanely difficult.
Yeah.
And so I've been puttering around and slowly starting to get better ever since. Now you'll notice nowhere in that description do kaiju
Yeah.
ever show up. Um, but in terms of that, like I started with a web comic called The
Yes.
Secret Lives of Villains. It's not out there in the internet right now, but I was like, let's
Yep.
do a web comic. If it gets successful, we can build off that. If not, at least we'll have a opportunity to learn. And I think it was a website
Yep.
called Freelanced or something like that. I was like, I put the word out saying, hey, hey, this is, my name's Matt. I got this idea for a web comic. Who wants to help? And Frankie
Yep.
responded. And this was like
Yeah, I
2014,
believe so. Yeah. Yeah.
2015 ish. Yeah. And yeah, we've been, working together ever since. And yeah, that puttered around for a couple of years. I decided to, move again on my own this
Yeah, I know. I
time.
remember that. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, yeah, it was, it was interesting to say the least. But that's a whole different story. But yeah, no, while all of this was happening, while all of this was going on, I was like, hey, I couldn't help but notice, Frankie, you're really
Yeah.
into kaiju. So like we had been doing the webcomic for like 8, 9 years. I was like, let's do something that, Frankie really wants to do. Let's,
Ah.
we can do that. Also, this was around the time when the
Yeah.
MonsterVerse movies were really becoming a thing. And I
Yeah,
was like,
yep.
okay, let's, this is interesting. This bears, closer study. This, there's potential here. And I don't remember what the exact inspiration was for our book Kaijus and
Yeah,
Cowboys.
no, it's weird. I'm still a little
But
foggy on it too, as well, because we were talking,
well,
and yeah, and then
yeah,
I'm still like, what? It was like something. I remember you said something about a cowboy, and I was like, oh, that's cool, and whatever. And then the idea started going.
yeah, it just happened. Well, because like well, before Kaijus and Cowboys, there was a thing called Team
Yes,
KS1,
yes,
which what will be
yes.
making an appearance later. I remember exactly what the inspiration for that was. There was a scene in the trailer for the first MonsterVerse movie
Mm,
where they're doing the
yes,
Halo jump.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I saw that and I was like, that sounds like the music from 2001: A Space
yeah,
Odyssey.
yeah.
And it was the music from 2001: A Space Odyssey. I was like, hmm. But like the idea of like, regular humans going up against, giant like apocalyptic
Yep.
world-ending monsters. I was like, there's a story there.
Hmm.
And so that sort of, spiraled into that.
So
And
I don't mean to cut you off, but
you know,
so people understand that listen to
yes.
this, we came out with that idea before Kaiju number 8. Kaiju number 8 is a manga that came out like later. It's much more later and
Okay.
stuff where they have like
Yeah.
human beings with suits fighting against giant kaijus. And we already
Mhm.
had an idea that was on that line. So it just shows you how I always felt like we're all connected.
That's
It's just time. It just depends on who
yeah,
comes out with whatever comes out at a certain time or whatever. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
And we have
yeah,
documented
yeah. We got
proof too.
documented
That's
proof.
the important thing.
Yeah, that's the important part. Well, I love the fact that y'all both have already answered two
Oh,
of my
no, oh man.
questions before you begin to it. So we're making great time on that. But it's cool that I've used Fiverr before for
Hmm.
commissioning artwork and things like that. So it's cool to see that someone has used that type of method because I don't even think freelance is
No,
still
no, it's
even
gone.
in use
Freelance is
anymore. I think
gone.
most of it now is
Yeah,
either yeah, it's like
Yeah.
Upwork or Fiverr now.
and the
So,
fact of not being
but
scammed.
I've
I mean, that was one of the big things I
yeah,
talked to
that's
Matthew about, where I
important.
was just like, because I was very open. I said, check me out. I'm always like, boom. You look. I tell people, do your due diligence. Make sure, see if I have your LinkedIn or whatever. You do your due diligence on me to make sure that I am the real deal and
Right.
stuff like that. And
Yeah,
he's been scammed
I've been
before.
scammed. I what like
Me too.
before there was Frankie,
Yeah.
there were others. And like there were others who did produce artwork, and there
Hmm.
were others who did like there was other stuff before the Secret Lives of Villains, but Frankie is that
Yeah.
rare and wonderful skill that is absolutely that is absolutely a skill and is absolutely something that you should be able to cultivate if you want to be a professional freelancer, which is doing good work
Yeah.
quickly
And
on time,
communication.
like speaking
And
That
as
is
communicating.
rare.
Well, that's what I
That
was
is
yeah.
raised. I
rare.
mean, I'm OG, where it's like the biggest thing my teachers always told me was reputation is everything. And that always stays in my
Yes,
mind. He
reputation is
said,
huge.
regardless of what my teacher was like, look, he said, Frank, if you ever deal with a client, right, and say if you charge the client, and in your heart of heart, you did the work, and you go, man, I feel like I should have got paid more. He said, don't. He said, you still give that client 200%. You do the job 200% because you never know what's going to happen the next time. Next time, now you learn better. But next time that client will be like, "Why you gave me 200%? I'm going to toss your name to somebody else or whatever," and you get more work. And it's always worked that way. But you have to
Yep.
go in it with 200% of getting the job done. You have to keep your word. your reputation. And I try to tell young
Yeah,
artists
that's
out
true.
there, regardless of what, you work with the client, you communicate with them. Don't none of this ghosting, none of this stuff. You get on the horn with them. Yeah, and then when I say the horn, I'm old school. Like sometimes you may have to get on the phone and talk to somebody. I trust me.
Yeah.
We do.
I remember being on the phone with a art director in New York City, and that guy blasted me. He was just ah, and I just was calm and everything because it was a weekend. It was like a last minute gig, and this guy had to do his own personal
Hmm.
stuff, whatever. But they hired me. I was going through a rep agency in New York, and so they were like, "Hey Frank, this gig's going to be over this weekend." So I lost my weekend was done, so I wasn't doing anything. So I'm waiting for this guy to get the job done, and he's at some kind of party or something. It's the AD, and so I was like, "Look, can you find this guy? Like, what am I doing? This whole weekend's gone or whatever. I want to get paid." So the guy's like, I finally was able to reach him,
Right.
get him on the horn, and he just blasted. He just yelled at me and everything. And I said, okay, took a breath, and I said, okay, well, no problem, but please, I need to understand when am I gonna get these boards so I can start on nice and calm, concise, whatever. I started working on the boards, finished them, and then after I did it, he came back and called and apologized for his actions to me and stuff like that. But those are the things that I've gone through in my career where I was like, you have to learn how to temper yourself. Temper what that thing. This is
Yeah.
professional. Being a professional. Now, does a professional mean being a professional mean that you should be taking crap if somebody's giving you something hard or like a client doesn't want to pay or whatever? No. You talk to them. You try to explain. You try to figure out what the situation is. Maybe try to work something, negotiate something with the client. Maybe you can say, hey, look, maybe we can do a payment plan, something that can make it work before you finally want to pull that trigger. You never want to burn bridges. That was the other one that my teacher once told me. He said, Frank, you never want to burn bridges.
Yeah.
If you
You
can,
never want to burn them
if it,
bridges.
you
And
know, yeah,
speaking from the other side of that, if given the choice between having something in on time and having like the perfect, like highest quality art you can possibly make, personally, I'd rather have
yeah,
it on time. Mostly on account of the fact that I fall victim to this as a writer. It's like, let's just make this
Yep.
yeah,
absolutely perfect because then we'll do that. But it's like, you can change
yeah.
things, you can fix things. But if it's but if you're not
Well,
meeting
people have
deadlines,
forgotten that
mm,
comic books, they're a product. Let's all be clear on that. Just like movies and stuff like that, they're products.
eh,
Like this is a product.
Yep.
So this whole idea of something that's perfect, I try to tell people out there, I'm like, look, if you're trying to chase this perfection, that's insane. The thing is that the
Hmm.
publisher, how does a publisher make money? They make money by pumping these out, as many as these that they can, each issue. That's how Marvel and DC were able to be at the place that they're at now. They were pumping out books monthly, constantly pumping them out. Now there were hits and there were misses, but they still were getting issues out. And the thing is that you have to get in the mindset of like, you know, that this is a journey when it comes to comic books. You know, artists and writers start from a certain point A, and then the reader, stick with them if you choose to see where that journey leads you. I read Chris Claremont in his X-Men run. I
Hmm.
read Chris Claremont when he no, excuse me, John Byrne when he did his run on Fantastic Four and other people. I was in it. I stuck with it and whatever to see the journey. Sure, there were some stories that were like, oh, blah blah, but still, I didn't lose my mind and quit the story. I stayed with that story, and I think that's what we need to get back to with comic books is that you gotta get the product out. It's a product. How do you think they're gonna make money? How does a publisher make money on just one book? If they put out one book and it takes 1 year, 2 years, not even 1 year, 2 years, 3 years for one book.
Hmm.
Think how many people you've lost. Think how many
It's
people that
outrageous.
step away
Yeah.
because you lost in that 3 years where you've been working on this book and trying to make the perfect art and trying to do all this stuff perfect cover, chromium, all this stuff,
Hmm.
beautiful looking thing, but now you put it out and you've lost how many, like almost 30%, maybe 40% of your readers because they've moved on to something else.
That's true.
yeah,
You
Yeah.
got it. That's not business. That's not good business.
yeah. There are books I'm reading. There are books I'm reading. There are books I
Yep,
backed on
same here.
Kickstarter. I'm again
Yep,
not going to mention their
same
name,
here.
but like I backed them. I've been, I backed them like 3 years
Yeah,
ago. I'm still
I
waiting.
know I'm not
Oh
getting one. I
wow.
know one
So,
book. I know I'm not getting. It kills me, but I backed on Indiegogo,
That's
and I know I'm not getting it. So it's
oh
like,
yeah.
that's about reputation. Your reputation means something, and
Hmm.
business. This is a business too. It is a
It is a
business.
business, yeah.
That is
That's
very
important.
important.
So you two have talked about your book,
Yes.
Kaijus and Cowboys, or
mhm.
your series really, because it's on
Number 6.
number 6 now for the
Yep.
Kickstarter. The Kickstarter is currently going. I think you have what, 2 weeks left before the
Three
Kickstarter
Three
ends.
weeks.
weeks.
3 weeks.
We got about 3 weeks, and we are like
Yeah,
ninety
yeah,
percent of the way
yeah.
there already. So it's
Sweet.
like, who wants to help us
Yes.
reach the mountaintop? It's
Yeah.
it's
So with that said, give us the log line for
There you
Kaijus and
go.
Cowboys.
so so Kaijus and Cowboys. It's the way I like to describe it to people. It's basically robot Clint Eastwood wandering around on an alien planet fighting kaiju monsters. It's if you're looking for like similarities of what you've seen, it's like you know uh, you've got Clint Eastwood, you've got a little bit of Samurai Jack as well,
Okay.
and it's Godzilla, and so yeah, Clint
We do,
Eastwood
but
fights
we also
Godzilla.
pay. Yeah,
So
we definitely
when
pay
I
a
read,
homage to the '80s. I tell people that we're like, try to think of an
yeah,
'80s animated show. If you ever watched the '80s animated show,
That's what I
many of
got
the
when I saw
'80s
the trailer.
animated shows will go right into the action. Like they'll just be like, boom, you get hit with this action,
mhm,
and then they say, okay, we
Yeah.
got the action. Now let's start telling you the story. And each episode would be a building up of the plot. There'll be these little bitty nuggets here and there until you eventually get to
Yeah.
wherever they're gonna take you to. But that's technically it. A
mhm,
lot of action, a lot of color. That's all purpose. Everything that you see right there is all on purpose. It's my love of growing up reading books from the late '70s into the '80s, bright colors, insane scenes of action. I even hand letter my own sound effects. So we do have a letterer, Mike
Oh
Stock,
wow.
but I do like that word right there, spow. I drew that on the artwork. So just
yeah,
because I feel like those
yeah.
those
Nice.
kind of things are just classic. They're just part of they're part of the whole
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah,
Nice.
when we were doing this, we wanted like one of the things that I did when I was writing this was every issue is a fight scene, but
Mm.
it does tie into a larger story. Issue five, things do quiet down a little bit, and so like we move the plot forward. But issue six is like I don't want to spoil too much, but like it's the big sort of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
payoff for the first half of the story,
Okay.
and there is again I don't know how to talk about this without like spoiling too much, but it's like I
The
want to I
conundrum
want
of
to
a writer.
Yeah, I know.
it's like uh but it is the biggest action set piece we've ever created so far,
Wow.
and it's impactful in like the in the
Yeah,
most literal
yeah,
and figurative sense. Like it's crowded, busy.
yeah,
There's so much going on, and it like it. There's this giant double page spread in the
yeah.
middle of issue six that is
Well,
just
it's a passion project. It's a
Wow.
and
passion
like
thing. Like
yeah.
my immediate feeling of it was like I tried to put in as much stuff that I remember because I love manga and I love anime. I was part of that whole scene back in the
Mhm.
'80s when we were getting VHSs and I was part of an anime club and we literally they gave us scripts so we would understand what the film what it was because it's in Japanese. But one of the things about it, yeah.
You see, kids,
Yeah,
VHSs
I
are
know.
this
I
thing
know
that
the
we used to
tape
watch.
gets all jammed.
It was analog.
Oh man.
VR
Oh dude,
is what
I
we
remember when
were
my VCR
experiencing.
ate the tape. Oh, it was like no.
Oh,
Oh,
I
you trying to
remember
pull it
those
out all
Oh,
days.
gentle.
Yeah. That was pain. Yeah.
and you had to
Yeah.
rewind
Woo!
them,
These
and
kids today,
there were
they have
stores that
no
you would
idea.
go
They
to.
have the struggle. But I mean, yeah,
Right. So
yeah, sure.
I have another question for you because this is interesting. So I mentioned already that this
Yes.
is number 6 that you're running the Kickstarter for.
Mhm.
Um, and and from what I can tell, there's a lot of story that's set to go with
Yep.
Kaijus and Cowboys. Do you have do you already know how many issues you have planned for this
Yep.
series in total,
Yep.
or is
Yes.
12.
Yeah, we have 12
Yep.
issues planned. 12 issues
okay?
planned. The whole thing's plotted out. The artwork for issue
Yep.
6 is done. It's
Sweet.
very important to us,
Yep.
as going back to being the professional, um, that like when we announce a book,
Yep.
when I announce a book,
Yeah.
most of
Hmm.
it's done.
Like that.
Because like we said, we want to get this into the hands of readers as fast as humanly possible. Like I've gotten like a bunch of comments from people saying like, thank
Yep.
you for getting this
Yep.
done quickly in previous
Hmm.
Kickstarters, and like it's something that's important to us, and it's something that we feel is important to the comic book
Yep.
industry in itself.
Yeah.
So 12 issues, whole thing's plotted. The artwork is all done for issue 6 and all the way up to
Yep.
issue 8,
Yeah.
and I'm hammering on the
Ooh.
Yeah.
script for issue
We had that
9 as
talk.
well.
We had that discussion. I told
Nice.
Matthew I brought in a lot of stuff I learned from animation and from film and from
Hmm.
even advertising. How the sense of production time is a very, it's like you need to be able to have a structured production schedule to do anything.
It's sacred.
You need to have a
Yeah.
time that fits your project so that everyone doesn't lose
Hmm.
their mind trying to scramble to try to get everything. Everyone, you got to have a breathing space so that you can allow time for editing. You can allow time for, say, if somebody happens to get
Hmm.
sick and they may miss like a week of work.
Yeah.
That's, see, people don't understand. Like
Yeah.
when I sit down and look at movies and stuff, that's why it takes time for films to make it to the final
Yeah.
theater, because all that time,
Hmm.
they fit in all that where they go, well, what if it's sick? What if somebody gets sick? Okay, that's 2 weeks. Okay, so we figure that 2 weeks.
And why it
It's
costs so
all
much.
factored
Yeah.
in there so that they make sure that the product can be put out at a efficient time. Now, clearly there may be some
That's true.
times that things may come in where you have no control and you may have to go beyond it. But you never should take, like, well, I'm going back to comic books. It should never take years for someone to get something like a comic book. That's just, I don't know.
Mhm.
That's just me
That's
personally.
true.
You
Yeah.
should be able to have that in
No, I
hand
agree.
as soon as possible. Like we treat
Absolutely.
crowdfunding like technically like we're at a con. Like when you go to a con, you already have your books.
Hmm.
You have your table and you have your books.
Mhm.
True.
So
Yeah.
technically, yeah,
And for anyone who's interested, I will be at
yes,
conventions. I have 2 scheduled so far. I'm going to one in Pittsburgh in July, and I'm going to one in Atlanta in no, I'm going to Pittsburgh in June. I'm going to
yeah.
Atlanta in July. And
Nice.
hopefully I'll be going to Chicago in August, but fingers
Using
crossed on
using
that.
yeah, using
So,
Okay.
crowdfunding as a tool to just reach out to a larger audience. Because again, we're able to reach
Mhm.
you at a cheaper
Absolutely.
expense too. I mean, you're not traveling all over the place with a bunch of books in your whatever. So
That's
literally,
true.
you're
Yeah.
using this as just as a
Yeah.
marketing tool. Advertising. Use it as
Yeah.
a marketing tool to hopefully
That's
get
true. Yeah.
people abroad as well as domestic who happen to see this. They happen to be scrolling
Yeah.
through and go,
Nice.
"Oh wow, I'm into robots and I'm into giant monsters and I'm into
Yeah.
sci-fi and I like cowboys, I guess. So maybe I'll check this thing out." That's the whole thing.
I
Yeah,
can
there
live
you go.
like
It's like a
them.
little bit of that, a little bit of
Yeah.
that. Hey, that's how I am sometimes when I'm finding new things I want to back. I go, that's
Me
pretty
too. Yeah.
interesting. Oh, all right, I'll try that. That's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
the one of the best ways to sell something is saying it's like
Yes.
this, but
But
this.
I will say
Exactly.
now I've
So
become much
yeah.
more like the artwork, man. I really scrutinize now because I've gotten some books back from some campaigns that I spent some money on and I wasn't happy. It was just because it's tough when you're an artist and you've worked in the field and stuff just look. And I'm saying for major stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna toss names, but for major companies where I got their stuff and I was like, you got to be kidding
Hmm.
me. Yeah, it's just one of those moments like you never want to look at something and be like, wow, wow, I spent X amount, wow, like not in a good way.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
so it's made me a little gun shy towards certain projects where I want to make sure that people are put out your best stuff. I'm not saying it has to be perfect, but it has to be
Mhm.
strong enough so it's like boom, it can stay. You want to be. I told Matthew, I said, Matthew, if we go to a con, I want to feel proud. I don't want to feel that Iggy feeling like, hmm. Like, how do you sell something to somebody when you're just like, I only gave 50% to make, 50% to make that. You want to be
That's
like, I
true.
gave 200%. You want to be able to be like, you're
Mm-hmm.
exuding it so that people see it. They go, wow, this person's into it. They gave everything so that for this book. So now I'm gonna buy this. I'm gonna purchase this from them because they gave me everything. You never want to feel that. That's a horrible
Yeah,
feeling, So
I mean,
that is true. Yeah.
you're asking people to take money that they
yes,
worked hard
yes,
to earn, money that could be going towards things like,
yeah,
food
sure,
or
sure,
retirement funds or
sure,
family or whatever. And you're saying like, give me, give me a
sure.
piece of that. Give me a piece of your work and your effort
Yeah,
for something that I did. And like,
Mhm.
I would want to make darn sure that I don't know about swearing, but I would
yeah,
want to make damn
yeah,
sure that
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
worth it. So
that's
yeah.
true.
yeah,
So, couple more questions, and then
All right.
I'll let you two go. Um, Other than Kaijus and Cowboys, are there any other stories coming from the Brain Trust here?
Yeah, there he
funny you
goes.
should ask. I just got this back from the printer. It's
Oh
Ooh,
wow,
sneak
yeah,
peek.
Guardians of the Last Dragon.
yes,
Nice.
yeah, Guardians of the
Oh, that
Last
looks
Dragon.
good.
Um, I like to describe this one as you remember the movie
Yes,
Underworld, like
yes.
vampires versus werewolves. It's like that, but
Mm.
instead of werewolves and vampires, it's knights and dragons. This is
Okay.
actually not written by me. I did have I helped edit it.
Okay.
It's by a friend of mine named Zach Schimmel, and the artwork is by a guy
Nice.
named Ben Basil. And
Nice. It looks pretty
yeah,
good.
it's black and white with some spot colors in there as well, and it's basically like this cyberpunk dystopian thing where it's like it's the tail end of this years long the centuries long conflict between humans and dragons, and you've got like the knights are like these cyberpunk mechanically engineered warriors, and you've got the dragons where there's like bioengineering and
Nice.
genetic
Nice.
modification, and like you've got like the spaceships.
Wow.
Cameras are not my friend. You got spaceships, you've got like the tall buildings, you've got like
So
the
this
Blade
so this
Runner
new book
stuff,
is going
all
to
of
be
that.
underneath the Cambrian Comics label. Yes.
Yes, yes. So this book is offered as a bundle with Kaijus and
Yeah.
Cowboys #6. Uh,
Sweet.
we have a
Yes.
trade paperback that collects the first
Yes.
issues because there are people like we love doing our floppies, but we also understand
Hmm.
that there are people that do buy things for the trades. I also have another book called Romanus Magicae. I don't have a copy of that on me right now, but that's also a thing. If you check
Yes.
out the Kickstarter, you can learn more. We also have a website,
Hmm.
cambriancomics.com, where you can check out more, read some stuff, make sure that it's
Hmm.
something that you want to, spend your hard-earned money on, because like I said,
Yeah.
times are tough, and we understand. We
Yeah.
understand that this is a commitment, and we understand that you know this is like being able to do this, being able to make this
Yes.
is a privilege.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's not possible
Yeah.
without you guys.
Also,
So
I have also there's
it's
commissions
here.
here. If you want to have me do some artwork for you, I'll do some
Yes,
artwork. So again, it's like, yeah.
true luxury. True luxury is being able to create something
Yes.
custom. It's being able to have something that no one else has, that you can say you have your own.
Yeah.
And Frankie is an absolute genius
I
when it
love
comes to
it.
stuff like
I
this. We
just love
actually
it. I
have,
mean, I
yeah,
tell any person out there. First off, I'm very grateful for the people who want to own some artwork done by me. As an artist, I mean,
hmm
that's always been my dream, is to have my artwork in someone's collection or hanging up on their wall. That's the whole point of being an artist to me.
hmm
That's the high point. To know that my artwork is out there in the wilderness. I'm always
Yeah.
yeah,
grateful
Yeah.
for any people who want to take that leap. I'm a collector myself, and I've purchased artwork from artists as well. So, I know that feeling of like owning something that's original, made by somebody's hands and stuff like that, and the power of it. So I'm just saying. So if you go on the
And
campaign,
it's all very it's all
we
pretty
try to be
affordable, and
very
it's
conscious of
all,
that, of the affordability of it, because I mean, this is about getting books. I told Matthew, I said, Matthew, we're not going to get rich doing this. Let's be honest. But the reality is that if we get readers, to get people out there that's going to invest in reading us, that's the
That's
key.
the key. Yeah.
And the thing about it, I wish comic books, the big guys would understand that they had a fantastic formula. Books were cheaper. They wanted a cheaper stock of paper, and people could just get them, and just thousands of copies were being put out. And once it changed, then that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Paper quality and all that nonsense, but
yeah.
So, as we wrap up, my last question for you all: where can people find you outside of
oh
Kickstarter?
boy.
So, drop your socials, or
Oh,
if you
okay.
have a specific social page for your comic book company.
Frankie
people
B.
know where they
Washington,
can
Frankie B.
get more of
Washington,
your work.
TikTok, Facebook, Twitter X, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah,
It's Twitter.
yeah, yeah, YouTube. I mean, my name is Frankie B. Washington. People can find me. You can Google my name and I'll pop up and stuff. So, yep.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm Matthew Blair. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram under Cambrian Comics. That's the name of the little publishing venture we've got set up so far. We have a website. We do our best to keep it updated and do our best to post things on a regular basis. And if you have any questions, I don't like being on Twitter all that much. I don't, or like Blue Sky or whatever. But like, oh, I'm also on Blue Sky.
Yeah, me too.
But if you
Yeah.
have any questions, you can ask, and I promise we will
Yeah.
answer. Because social media may be a pox on the world, but I do
Yeah.
love talking to people.
And we
I love talking to people.
respond pretty
It's
quickly
world,
back
yeah.
too. We
It-
definitely respond back because that's the most important thing. You got to communicate with people. We've had people do reviews of our book
That's true.
and stuff, and we take all that comes
Mhm.
from whatever. It's always great to hear good, bad.
Good,
Exactly,
bad,
you
ugly.
learn from different things. You have conversation, discussions. That's what
Yeah.
we want to have. We want to be able to have these discussions. We want people to read it and be like, oh, well, what does this mean? And so that's great stuff. That means that you've taken the time to read it. So yeah.
That's true. Well,
Ah.
it's been a joy talking to you, Matthew and Frankie.
No, thank
Like,
you so much.
This has been such
Thank
a
you,
fun
Gary.
interview, and I appreciate y'all coming on here. Hopefully, get to bring you on for your next book.
Oh,
that-
most
that's
definitely.
Oh
coming
yes,
out.
we have
So,
3 more Kickstarters planned this year.
Ugh.
Sweet. So, ideally, I can at least get you
Yeah,
in for
there
at
you
least
go.
one of those.
No,
But
thank
we'll
you so
see
much
for
for
sure.
inviting us on, man. I mean, thank you. I mean, you
No problem.
never know how these things happen. But again, I remember one of my, and I won't drag too many years, but one of my mentors, because I had a lot of mentors, man. But I remember this guy. He was a wealthy guy. He was into real estate, and I never forget. I was in his office, and he was looking at the stocks, and he said, "The stock market, excuse me." And he said, "Frank," he said, "I just lost 30 grand." And I'm in my 20s when he said this, and he just said it kind of matter of factly, like it was nothing. 30 grand, man. And then he looked at me and he said, "Frank," he said, he said, "the doers do and the don'ts don't." Just like that. And he just went back and looked at his stock market thing. And I said, "Doers do and the don'ts don't." He said, "Yeah, just remember that." And that always stuck with me. And it is true. As simple as it sounds, the doers do and the don'ts don't. Be a doer. You do it. Go out there and do what you need to do. Whatever it takes. If you want to create a comic book, do it. Don't procrastinate about it. Do it. If that means going to the basics and just folding paper together and just drawing panels and writing whatever, then do it. Don't procrastinate. Because when you procrastinate, it'll never get done. And then time will float by. And next thing you know, you'll be a much more mature person regretting that you never did. And so I've always stuck. That's my mantra. One of the many mantras that plays in my head sometimes. The doers do and the don'ts don't. We started something back 5 years ago. We never knew we'd be at this point sitting with you, talking to you right now, Gary. We couldn't have saw this. We didn't know that, but the
Never
thing
know.
about it is
You never
about
know.
the doers get noticed. They get out there and they do stuff. You know, yeah.
And if you must procrastinate, make sure you're reading our books.
I think that
Yeah,
is a perfect
there you
place to
go.
stop because that was great. So everyone, all the links to their social media, to the website, to the Kickstarter will be in the description below. So go click on the links, go back to Kickstarter. By the time this video goes up, this will be most likely Friday. I think that'll be
Awesome.
around the 19th. So
All right.
there'll be plenty of time for everyone to go back it, help them get up to
Yeah.
over 100% funded, and see
There
what
you go.
stretch
Get
goals
some
they have,
comics, folks, and artwork.
Until next time, this has been the Divergent Comics YouTube channel.
Thank
Thank
you.
y'all for watching.
All
Go
right,
read some
that's right.
comics.
Keep that art flowing.